Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about CBDa, or cannabidiolic acid. Basically what that is the precursor to CBD. Now recently there's been some studies about CBDa that prove to be more potent in some ways than CBD. So it's be interesting to see what their findings are. Now, we're going to be talking about this article from Project CBD. This website's really good about sourcing their articles with valid sources and giving you as much information as possible. So we're going to go over this story together. Now, before we start this video, definitely like, subscribe, and comment down below if you have any questions or just want to have your voice heard. It definitely helps with YouTube growth, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Now let's go over this together. So let's see. What is CBDa? So cannabidiolic acid was first isolated by Israeli scientist Raphael Mechoulam in 1965. Through exposure to sufficient heat or sunlight, CBDa changes into CBD by going through a chemical process called decarboxylation, in which the decarboxyl group is lost. While many of us associate decarboxylation with cannabis, the same chemical reaction occurs in cellular respiration. It's the reason we all exhale CO2 as a byproduct of metabolism. For many years, decarboxylated cannabinoids were considered the active compound, producing more potent therapeutic effects in our bodies. However, this assumption has recently been turned upside down, with studies showing CBDA's activation of 5-HT1A serotonin receptors to be significantly more potent than CBD. And CBD was also shown to have a stronger binding affinity than CBD as an antagonist at another important receptor known as GPR55. These discoveries suggest that CBDA could indeed have an important place at the therapeutic table for conditions as varied as cancer, anxiety, epilepsy, and treatment-resistant nausea and vomiting. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. I mean, we all know CBD, or most of the known cannabinoids that we've extracted and used for therapeutic effects usually help with cancer, anxiety, epilepsy, all these kind of things. But certain cannabinoids help with certain things better than others. So I think in this case, CBDA works better for, so for instance, treatment-resistant nausea and vomiting, and just certain different things. And this needs to be tested upon tested. So this is all just speculation until we can get the clinical trials out there. But it'll be interesting to see what CBDA does differently than CBD, for instance. All right, so CBDA for nausea and vomiting. Serotonin is perhaps the most widely known class of neurotransmitter due to its role in mood regulation. However, serotonin's biological reach extends far beyond just keeping us happy. It is involved in such diverse psychology functions as nausea, vomiting, and intestinal movements. Much of what we know about CBDA's activation of 5-HT1A serotonin receptors is thanks to research by Erin Rock and her team at Guelph University in Ontario, led by neuroscientist Linda Parker. Rock examined the therapeutic application of both CBD and CBDA for different types of nausea and vomiting. She showed that by binding the 5-HT1A receptors in a more potent fashion than CBD, CBDA suppressed nausea and vomiting caused by toxins and motion sickness. Perhaps the most exciting breakthrough relates to CBDA's remarkable success in reducing anticipatory nausea, the type of intense nausea one experiences prior to chemotherapy when patients feel horrible before treatment has even begun. Anticipatory nausea, it should be noted, has no effective pharmaceutical treatment. So that's interesting that CBDA helps with that. So now we have a natural treatment against anticipatory nausea, which I'm sure is an awful thing to experience, especially when you're going through chemotherapy, trying to get rid of your cancer, and even before your treatment starts that day, you're already sick. So this is some amazing stuff. Hopefully we can get more trials out there and test it test it better to see really like what the sweet spot is for the dosage and all that other good stuff. All right, in a different study examining the efficacy of combining CBDA with ondansetron, a standard antiemetic drug, Rock's team found that even at very low doses, CBDA enhanced the pharmaceutical drug's anti-nausea effect. In fact, Rock goes on to assert that the amount of CBDA needed to reduce nausea was a staggering 1,000 times less than required by CBD to have the same effect. All right, so that's really interesting that the activated form is needed 1,000 times less than CBDA, which is the acidic form, to treat anti-nausea. And from the studies that we've gone, studies that I've researched and what we've seen so far is that CBD does very well at preventing nausea. So if CBDA does 1,000 times, that is more potent with 1,000 times less required of a dosage, that's pretty fantastic. I'm sure there are going to be lots of companies that are now focusing on CBDA-rich tinctures and whatnot to help out with that. All right, so furthermore, Canadian scientists confirm that CBDA is non-intoxicating or impairing as it does not interact with CB1 cannabinoid receptors. This makes CBDA potently a better option for patients who struggle with mood-altering effects of THC-rich cannabis or durobinal, FDA-approved synthetic THC. All right, so CBD and epilepsy. CBD burst into the mainstream largely because of its celebrated anti-seizure effects. To date, the only approved CBD pharmaceutical in the United States is the purified CBD tincture Epidiolex for 3 types of drug-resistant epilepsy. It is not surprising that GW Pharma, the company behind Epidiolex, is looking closely at CBDA's therapeutic potential. The pharmacokinetic studies compared CBDA with CBD. GW scientists found CBDA to have a superior bioavailability and faster onset than CBD, properties that make CBDA a very attractive option for drug development. So I'm always talking about bioavailability, and which is basically how fast and how potent the CBD is when ingested, and how fast and how quickly it gets into your bloodstream. So if CBDA has a higher bioavailability by default than CBD, that means you're getting a more powerful, more potent, and a quicker response for your receptors, which is really fantastic. Not only did it require lower doses, thus reducing the chance of side effects, but CBDA was more effective in seizure reduction in certain parameters. Some of this data appears in GW's patent application for the use of cannabinoids as in the treatment of epilepsy, rather than in a peer-reviewed study. But it certainly backs up Rock's findings, as well as anecdotal reports coming from US cannabis clinics such as Bonnie Goldstein and Dustin Sulak, who've had great success when treating patients with CBDA. Okay, yeah, so like with this, basically there just needs to be more clinical trials. It seems like it was kind of a hearsay trial, but hopefully those pre-trials will lead to more trials. More clinical trials, rather. I know the FDA is commissioning companies to test certain products, especially for use of edibles or put in food. So like I said, there's always going to be more testing done. Cannabinoids are kind of taken seriously now, or will be taken seriously more so in the future. So we'll get these tests out, and we'll make sure that CBDA or any of the other 120 cannabinoids, if it helps people, we're going to find out. All right, so let's talk about this case study. So Peruvian physician Max Alzamora, wow, that was awful. Alzamora shared a compelling case study involving CBDA in a recent Society of Cannabis Clinics webinar. 14-year-old Glendy came into his office having 10 seizures a day due to autoimmune encephalitis. I'm just going to skip that because I butchered that. Prior to seeing Dr. Alzamora, she had at one point been in a medical coma for 45 days. She also contracted drug-induced hepatitis, which was caused by medication she'd been prescribed. Dang, Glendy is not having a good time. Glendy's parents acquired CBD oil from the United States, which brought about some seizure reduction. However, buying imported CBD oil wasn't financially viable for the family, so the doctor found a local source of CBD oil, or so he thought. Turns out that the CBD oil hadn't been decarboxylated, which means heated, and Glendy was in fact taking CBDa. This was later confirmed when the oil was sent off for analysis in a California lab, and guess what? Her seizures reduced even further. In fact, at latest count, Glendy, now 16, only has 10 seizures a year and no longer takes any pharmaceutical anti-epileptic drugs. Her cognitive development, anxiety, autistic-like behavior, and overall quality of life have been markedly improved since switching to CBDA oil. And that's amazing. She was able to improve her quality of life and wean off of pharmaceutical anti-epileptic drugs, which have their fair share of side effects. So this is pretty amazing stuff. While I was already getting good results with my patients with cannabinoid treatments containing THC and CBD, end quote, says the doctor, CBDA has been especially effective in treating epilepsy, Parkinson's, and inflammatory conditions. For me, the acidic cannabinoids open a whole spectrum of therapeutic possibilities. All right, but medical scientists still have much to learn about CBDA's multiple mechanisms of action with respect to epilepsy and other conditions. I personally will be gathering more evidence and I hope will benefit patients. Awesome. So hopefully he'll be able to do some more testing on CBDA when it comes to epilepsy and just improving the quality of life for those patients. Now, Epidiolex is treatment for 3 specific epileptic conditions. So it'd be good to have to see if CBDA is even more effective than Epidiolex, which would be awesome. All right, so anti-inflammatory CBDA. With Glendy's epilepsy caused by an autoimmune condition, it's possible her positive response to CBDA in part could be attributable to the acid cannabinoids anti-inflammatory action, which may occur because of its role as a selective COX-2 inhibitor. There are 2 types of COX enzymes. COX-1 maintains the normal lining of the stomach and intestines, and COX-2 has a pro-inflammatory effect. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as aspirin and ibuprofen inhibit both COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes. By inhibiting COX-1, long-term use of these over-the-counter drugs can cause major gastrointestinal complications. It's therefore of therapeutic interest to develop select COX-2 inhibitors that bypass COX-1 and relieve patients' inflammation-related symptoms, while sparing them of any dangerous long-term consequences. As COX-2 inhibitor, CBDA shows potential as a safer, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, although studies have yet to be carried out on humans. One preclinical study also found that CBDA's downregulation of COX-2 enzymes may help prevent the spread of certain type of invasive breast cancer, typified by higher than normal levels of COX-2. When the breast cancer cells were treated with CBDA over 48 hours, both COX-2 and ID1, a protein associated with the aggressive spread of breast cancer cells, were downregulated, while SHARP1 expression, a suppressor of breast cancer metastasis, increased. Although this is very much preliminary data, it suggests that for certain types of breast cancer, CBDA might halt the spread of malignant cells to other parts of the body, which is pretty fantastic, a natural approach to mitigating malignant cells, because that's basically how cancer works. It starts at one place and then it spreads, and once it spreads, it's kind of hard to stop spreading. So if we could use CBDA as a inhibitor to increase cancer cells and decrease the spread of cancer cells, that's amazing. So we can do this with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs in the place of cannabinoids, which is pretty amazing. If it is effective, it'll be sad because we've had these compounds for so long, and we're just now figuring out that there are so many just positive, beneficial therapeutic effects for CBD and all of the other different cannabinoids. All right, that's synthetic CBDA compound. In the last few months, Professor Mekulam has generated headlines once again with the launch of a patented synthetic CBDA methyl ester, with its chemical structure subtly altered to make the methyl ester compound more stable than CBDA. Mekulam and his team have begun to investigate the compound's therapeutic use in conditions such as anxiety, depression, inflammatory bowel disease, nausea, and vomiting, and as an alternative to steroids. While this stabilized version of CBDA may be easier to work with in the lab, particularly for development of pharmaceutical drugs, it isn't all clear that it represents a significant improvement as therapeutic modality compared to artisanal cannabis or hemp products containing CBDA. Yeah, so that's the only thing about synthetic. We'll see how effective it is compared to the original form. I'm not a huge fan of synthetic synthetic cannabis or anything like that. It's usually not good. But this guy also was the inventor of THC. Well, he discovered THC, so we'll give him a pass, and we'll let his clinical trials see if it is effective or not. And I'm not a doctor, nor am I a researcher, so what do I know? I'm just a guy that reads stuff. When stored appropriately in a cold, dark cupboard away from sunlight, CBDA does not tend to degrade if it is consumed within a few months. However, if you've got an open CBDA bottle that's been hanging around for a couple of years in direct sunlight, it probably won't have the same cannabinoid profile it once had, and your carrier oil may have gone rancid. Yeah, so if CBDA is heated or with heat or sunlight, it could definitely degrade. So that's the only thing about CBDA. It's very finicky with its shelf life. All right, so get some CBDA in your life. For the conscious consumer trying to navigate today's largely unregulated market, the presence of CBDA in a cannabis oil extract suggests that it's likely a true full-spectrum product, rather than a formulation made from CBD isolate or distillate, both of which require heat to decarboxylate. If you happen to have access to a few fresh cannabis leaves or flower tops, you may want to add some to a salad or smoothie. It's an easy way to get acidic cannabinoids into your system. Or as Dr. Dustin Sulak recommended in the 2019 CanMed conference in Pasadena, try putting a small amount of raw CBDA-rich bud into a cup of steeping tea. The heat won't be sufficient for decarbing, and you'll get the benefits of this hit-throw, neglected cannabis compound. Indeed, it seems that after all these years of living in CBD's shadow, CBDA is finally gaining recognition as safe and in some ways more potent alternative to its famous cannabinoid relative. For those who are already taking CBD oil, or for those who are thinking about it, small doses of CBDA-rich product may be worth considering. All right, fantastic. Yeah, so CBDA, hopefully hopefully with this information, more doctors, more researchers, more scientists will want to test out the compound, and hopefully we can find an effective way to distribute CBDA. and keep it fresh and keep it from degrading. Uh, but that's for future scientists to handle, and we'll be here to read the findings when they come out. So yeah, this is really interesting stuff. CBDa potentially, more potent, has better bioavailability than CBD, which is touted the healing drug, the healing natural drug. So we'll definitely see in the future what this holds for everyone, especially people going through the anticipatory nausea. I'm sure that's one of the number one things that CBDA is going to be used for. But yeah, that's awesome. Hopefully we'll get some more information in the future. But thank you guys for listening and watching. If you like the video, definitely like, subscribe, comment if you have any questions. If you guys are looking to get into CBD yourself, we have a quiz in the description down below. We'll get you some recommendations, personalized recommendations, and we'll get you with a CBD expert that'll be able to step-by-step get you through finding a brand and taking CBD the right way so that you're not hurting yourself. Also, talk to your doctor if you guys are interested in taking CBD because there are some just some concerns. You want to make sure what you're putting in your body is going to be effective for you because everyone's different, and you definitely want to make sure that whatever you're taking, if you're taking something currently, it doesn't interact or counteract CBD. So definitely talk to your doctor. But you guys have a wonderful day, okay? Goodbye now.